Oh, there we are. We're live.
Hello.
This has turned into my
We're
thing.
here.
I don't know why. Okay. Welcome. I'm stoked for this conversation today. We had a really fun one yesterday with Larry Long, my new best friend Larry. Today we get to talk to my new best friend Sheva, who was on our Mother's Day panel last week, and today we get to feature her and her research. Specifically, we're going to be talking about women in STEM roles and some of the research that Sheva's done into this. I'm loving getting to do these calls. So at Inclusive Agile, what we do is we teach people the Agile framework, but we do it with diversity, equity, inclusion built in along the way. So you're not just learning how to make your business run smoothly and deliver quickly. You're also learning how to make it a safe place for your team, for your diverse team members to come in and be their authentic selves at work. We feel like this is a whole company solution. DEI is not HR's problem. So that's what we do here. And if you want to learn more about us, we're at inclusiveagile.io, or please just reach out on LinkedIn. And we'll probably leave it in a little bit, but that's enough about us for today. I'm Carissa. I am the executive director at Inclusive Agile, and I've spent 26 and a half years as a woman in tech. I've been a software engineer for my whole career. This is the first time I've had a role that was not an engineering leadership role. So this is actually new for me. I'm going to let Brett do a quick intro, and then we will get intro from Sheva, and we'll just flow from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Carissa. I'm Brett Barker. I'm our VP of Learning and Development. This is my cat, Valette. She will be joining us for most of this, I'm sure.
She's very excited.
Anyway, so very, very thrilled to be here. I'm our VP of Learning and Development and one of our neurodiversity coaches. I'm on the autism spectrum, which is one of the reasons why I focus on that quite a bit. If you have any questions or want to see any more, there are so many live streams and blog posts from me out there. You can go find them on your own. I'm very excited to be here, and I want to make sure that everyone understands I do not want to be the dude in the conversation that brings it all back to being about men. So Sheva, Carissa, hold me accountable to that. If I start doing anything that goes that way, just shout out, let me know, and I'll back off. But I do want to be part of this conversation because it's important. It is vital that everyone be talking about this. So that's why
I'm so happy that you're here for this conversation, because Brett's background and my background are very similar. So we've been in the same spaces and dealt with the same kind of problems. So I kind of love that. One more thing before we hand it over to Sheva. I am saying it correctly, right, Sheva?
Yep, you're good.
Beautiful. Awesome. Okay, so we, as a team, are trying to be very intentional with our language. We are learners in this space. Most of us have not held diversity, equity, inclusion roles, right? We've learned about them. We're engaging in this space, but we are learners in this space. So one of the things we're trying to do with the intentionality around language is to not use generalizations. And I've asked Brett to help hold me accountable, because I get excited and I like hyperbole. That's what I do. So if I use, let's just say, all white cis het men are assholes about XYZ.
Oh my God. This is amazing. Love it.
I've asked Brett to please let's
brandishing.
Make sure we're clear and we're not using overgeneralizations. There might be times when one might be appropriate. I'll let Brett gets to decide. That's his thing. And if Brett starts centering, he's going to have to talk to the fox. So,
Ooh, there we go.
One of the many foxes. This one is the most recent. He doesn't have any.
And I assure you, this is one of many lightsabers in the room.
Okay, Sheva, enough about us. Start us off with your background.
Sure.
What you're doing now, what's important to you, what's your favorite color?
I'll start with my favorite color because I'm a purple person. There's something about purple people. If you like red, it's like, oh, I like red. I like blue. Purple people are purple people.
Have you seen our
I'm
website?
a purple person. I'm a purple person. Purple person. All purple. All day. So I'm a purple person. I'm a purple person. Okay. So we can talk about the color later. So yeah, so my background is in higher education. I was in higher ed for about 10 years, primarily doing diversity and inclusion work, but also those of you who are in higher ed, you wear a lot of hats like student affairs, faculty affairs, academic affairs, all that stuff. And then after that, I was a diversity and inclusion consultant for a bit. And then now I'm a higher education consultant. So diversity and inclusion is still at the heart of what I do, diversity, equity, inclusion. I feel like it's the thread that has always like tied my career together. So it's diversity, equity, inclusion, and it's not a separate bucket. It's not a check the box. It's no matter what you do, you should be thinking about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. So that's where I'm at. So I'm a higher ed consultant. I do change management in particular, which I'm very passionate about. I work for Huron, which is a fabulous company to work for, and I'm always looking at things from an equity and inclusion perspective. So that's where I'm coming from, and I'm a purple person. So.
You're a purple person, and Sydney says that they are too. Shout
Good.
out to Sydney, my oldest kiddos in the chat. Thanks, Sydney.
Amazing.
All right. Sheva, could you tell us a little bit more about your PhD, your kind of background in academics, and also tell us a little bit about your rise to prominence on LinkedIn and how we became like I ran into you at some point because you post things and you have a lot of followers. So like that was kind of an interesting story about how you had posted and things. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start at the beginning. So the whole, like, I always start with this story, and it might sound kind of funny, but so I started being an advocate and being interested in DEI before I even realized it, before realizing that I was white and I had white privilege and that I had lots of privilege. Did not realize it. I grew up going to a very fancy white, very Jewish as well. Like there was a lot of like Jews, private school. And so I went to that private school, and I went to the University of Cincinnati because Kyle's here. Hi, Kyle. Because my dad was faculty there. And so I ended up at University of Cincinnati. I feel like I kind of grew up there. Loved it there. Loved University of Cincinnati, worked there for a long time. But I was in a chemistry lab. So I was in this chemistry lab, and I'm sitting there getting ready, my first year of college. Like I thought I knew what I was doing, whatever. And everyone was white men. Everybody was a man. Everyone was a white man. Didn't realize even at the time white. Didn't even think about it. And everyone was a man. And I said, "Oh, how can I help?" And they said, "Just sit there and look pretty." And I was like, "What? Wait, what? Like I'm smarter than you. Like what?" So that was like
Stop. Was there a part of your brain that said, "Oh, they think I'm pretty"?
No, the first part of my brain was like, I'm smart as fuck. Like, what's going on here? Like, that wasn't even the thing. And so I heard that, and I thought, oh my God, like, what's going on here? Until I like really started to explore women in STEM and realizing what level of privilege that I had as a woman in STEM, as a white woman in STEM. And a lot of things happened where I ended up in a doctoral program, also at the University of Cincinnati, in educational and community-based action research. And the crux of action research, and I consider myself a participatory action researcher, is the community is the researcher. The community is the expert, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at women in STEM and working specifically with women and women of color in STEM and looking at what are your actual experiences. So that's how I ended up where I am now, which was, dang, like I 100% admit I didn't know what privilege I had. I never acknowledged it. And now I'm at the point where I do. But at the time, I just thought, I'm a woman. I'm being like, people are looking down on me, whatever. And I think that starting to do that research in my doctoral program made me realize that the place where I needed to be was a place that was equity and inclusion for everyone. And I had a narrowed focus on women, which now I realize was white women. So that led me to expand where I'm at now. So my doctoral degree, essentially, like the research that I did, was on women and women of color in STEM, looking at their experiences, them as experts, and how can we take what they experienced and pull that into actionable items. Like, how can we make things better, and what are programmatic things we can do for women in STEM.
And this is why I think you're neat. this is all the stuff that feeds right into what we want to do at Inclusive Agile, right? Like,
Awesome.
we believe that the diversity conversation isn't a separate conversation, right? It's every step of people showing up to work is affected by who they are, where they came from, what privilege they have and they don't have, what what seeable and unseen things they have going on, even just day to day could change. So that sensitivity, that understanding needs to be something that we just weave into the fabric of everything that we do. So I
Absolutely.
like so much. Okay, tell me a little about the LinkedIn thing, and then we're gonna go back to your research.
Oh shoot, I forgot the LinkedIn thing. Okay, so I was at the University of Cincinnati doing DEI work. I loved working at UC. I did, but then COVID hit, and I was reassessing my priorities. Thought, okay, I need a new job. Ended up in corporate HR doing diversity and inclusion work. I'm not going to name companies. I'm not going to name exactly what happened, but long story short, I got let go for being a diversity and inclusion consultant who was trying to do diversity and inclusion work. So that was, yes. So that was the thing. I feel like I was at the point where I was at a company, I was at a corporate company that was not ready to do DEI work, even though they had a DEI office. So I was a diversity and inclusion consultant, and I had my pronouns in my email signature. They didn't like that because they weren't ready to get to that point. They were, yes. How dare I? I know. How dare I? Thank you, Tisha, because I make DEI entertaining. I love that. Thank you. So yeah, so I was trying to do DEI work. They didn't like it. They fired me. And I posted to LinkedIn. Like, I didn't know where else to go. I was like, I lost my job. I was in higher ed for a long time. Higher ed's not necessarily the place that's known for being on LinkedIn. I'm in corporate now. What do I do? Yes, so many places are doing performative work. So they were doing performative DEI work. So I posted on LinkedIn, and that post just it just exploded. I am now, but I was never a social media person. I had been off Facebook at the time. I've never been on Instagram. I know, wild. I look at TikTok, but I'm not like doing TikTok. And once that post blew up on LinkedIn, I just started posting. I was like, okay, like I'm going to try to find a job. So I started posting, and I found an awesome community. Like, I found an amazing community of people on LinkedIn, like T, like you, like Kyle that commented. And because of that, that's why I'm here. And so that's LinkedIn happened not because I tried, which sounds I didn't try. It just happened. It just happened. So
yeah, well, there's a couple of things I wanted to just kind of maybe thank you for in the LinkedIn space. First off, I read your posts and I feel braver. I feel like, hey, look at her show up and be herself, and she's so freaking awesome. I can show up and be myself. This is a thing that you can do, and on LinkedIn even, and it's so great. And I just I love your posts for that. They just feel so authentic. Or maybe it's just a really, really well-crafted role, but I'm guessing not.
no, it's if I could do that, I would 100% be. I would give me way more credit than I'm due if I could have faked it all.
So that's the first thing. And the second thing is your image descriptions are so good, so descriptive. They bring in feeling into the image description. So, I mean, I even have started doing some research because I want to do that like you do. I want to be you when I grow up in image descriptions as well. So so
I have to shout out. I am going to shout out Angela Young. They have the most amazing image descriptions, and they are the reason. Angela is the reason why I have those awesome image descriptions. So I don't think that they are signed in today. Maybe they are. But Angela Young, They are an amazing person to follow, and they are the reason why I have those like creative image descriptions. They
They're
have the best
fantastic. I absolutely love it.
100%.
Okay. Let's get into your research.
Yeah.
Do you have a place you'd like to start?
I guess, yeah. So in a nutshell, so yeah, my primary research is on women in STEM. But I would have to step back and say that my research is not that traditional positivistic research that you would imagine. So I think when most people think about research, they might think, oh, you're doing research on subjects or you're collecting data from subjects. And the research I do is the exact opposite. For me, the communities that I'm researching, they are the experts on what they need, which is the essence of participatory research and participatory action research. So the very first step is the communities that you're working with, they're not subjects. They're not participants. They're co-researchers. They are doing research with you to make their communities better. And that's the second part of it, which is the action piece, is not only are your participants, quote unquote, researching with you, but the purpose of the research is not to say, this is what we learned, A, B, C, D, E. The purpose of the research is to make real change. So we're in communities saying, okay, you are the experts. What do you all need? I can help provide tools that you need to carry out the research. You will figure out what the problems are, what possible solutions are, and then we'll figure out how to make those solutions happen. So the research I do is, to the very least, to say it's applied. I think that that's like the very like lowest level you can say that it actually is applied, but it's more than that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm very curious as to the what it looks like when the research, they get the information, start actually applying it. What kind of results are you seeing from the research?
Yeah, absolutely. So one example that I absolutely love, and this is some research that I'm doing particularly on women in engineering. And this is my co-researcher, Dr. Brittany Arthur, who is fabulous. And we have worked on a lot of different projects together. And one of the projects that we did was looking at women in engineering that are undergraduates. And we were specifically studying what did they need to build community. What did they need for support? And there was a lot of different things that came out of the research. And we were doing a group level assessment, which is the way that I like to describe it in a nutshell, is a more engaging, a more structured focus group. So it allows more people to share their thoughts. It allows more people to be reflective, and it encompasses a variety of different styles of how you would engage. So you can write, you can speak. There's a lot of different things. So it really does, I guess, run the gamut. So we did a group level assessment with these women in engineering, saying, okay, what do you need for what's going on? What's going on with your experience? And support, again, was a big one. And in that moment, and this has never happened before in an assessment we've done, this was a unique moment, but it was a very powerful moment in that the women said, you know what we really need is we need to be able to communicate with each other in a way that is authentic and in a way that is accessible. So one of the women just literally ripped out a piece of paper and said, write your cell phone numbers down. We're creating a group meet. This was maybe, let's see, it's 2023. So this was probably 5 years ago at this point. So they collected a bunch of numbers. They created a group meet, and the group meet was things as small as, oh, I'm going to dinner, who wants to come? Or I'm forming a study group, who wants to be part of it? It was it was just anything that they wanted to build community. And that, as far as I know, I've heard that group meet is still going strong today.
Awesome.
And that was formed in the moment during this, essentially a focus group.
And these were women who were in college working on engineering degrees.
Correct. And we were literally in the moment saying, what do you guys need? And they said, well, we just need, we need to be able to communicate with each other. Let's create a group meet. And we're like, okay, Like, how do we make that happen? And they looked at us like, let's just do it. Like we were silly. Like, let's just do it. Let's just create it. So they literally pulled out a piece of paper, had everyone put their numbers down, created a group meet. And again, like obviously the people 5 years ago have graduated,
Yeah.
but that group meet still exists. And that is one of those things that when you think about things that are action based, they don't have to cost a lot of money. They don't have to take a lot of time. It depends on the needs of the community.
And yeah, turn to the people that are having the issue and ask them what
Exactly.
their solution is. Don't say, well, you guys need to communicate better. You have to use Teams.
Exactly. They know.
They know. And that gets so hard. The isolation is a big deal, right? When you're the only woman on a tech team, or you're the only woman who does the kind of engineering that you're doing, right? Like I've been technically reported to somebody who had a bunch of women on their team, but nobody else worked with the teams I worked with, right? So socially, I was completely isolated on these teams all the time. Do you have any idea of how that impacted? When we talk about a pipeline problem, which I hate, and we probably should talk about that some more in this call. I mean, there is a pipeline problem in that not enough women are going in, not enough women are graduating, and then a lot of women are falling out afterwards. Do you know if those kind of participatory things had an impact on that cohort of people graduating?
Yeah, so that's a really great question because this wasn't the only participatory method, the only group level assessment we did. We did multiple. And that was a very actually pervasive issue was, in biomedical engineering, there's a lot more women than there is in chemical engineering, right? Or, other types of engineering. So biomedical engineering was probably the one that had the most proportion of women. Was it still less than men? Probably. And so that was the biggest thing was bridging those gaps between the different types of engineering and how we can form those relationships between different women. Because that came up, it was, I'm in biomedical engineering, there's a lot of women, or I'm in chemical engineering, I don't see anybody. So part of it was forging those relationships across all of the majors. And I'm not going to lie, like it's hard because they're in different classes, and how do we create programming that makes sense for everybody? Is there going to be a program that makes sense for every single woman in engineering? No. But is there a way that we can at least try to get this community connected? And I think yes. I think, forming study groups and classes that are across all of engineering, like when you start as a freshman. And if we have that basis of that group, me as women come in, joining that and being able to talk to each other, then I think that it can trickle up almost. I don't know if that's the right term. But trickle down. Yeah, I don't think that's the right term, but it can, it can lead to that, like stepping stones. But no, I completely agree that there are different fields where there are a lot less women. And I think that one of the papers that I sent you was in biomedical informatics was I worked in a biomedical informatics department, and I would say like, I can't even tell you. It was a very small percentage of women.
Yeah.
And the part of it that was important was, we're all in different divisions. We're all in biomedical informatics, but we're doing totally different things. How do we bring ourselves together and forge those connections in a holistic way, even if we are working on different things? And I think that's the hard part because of the low percentage of women in those fields.
Yeah. Whew, absolutely, for sure. I'm curious. You talked about the intersectionality of making sure that Black women in engineering. I don't remember if you mentioned other persons of color in engineering. Did you do any research? I mean, first off, tell me how that impacted. But was there any other intersectionality that you focused on in your research?
Yeah, absolutely. So we specifically looked at we looked at white women and we looked at women of color, and more specifically, it was Black women. The hardest part, I think, for me, and the questions I got the most as we were doing our research was, how are you going to maintain anonymity? because I worked at a place where the amount of Black women in engineering, unfortunately, was so low that when we were doing the research, there were questions of how are you going to make your participants remain anonymous? How are you going to make sure I'm anonymous? And I didn't always have the answer to that. You can apply every protection that you would to maintain anonymity. But if you look at the numbers and you see, like, this is the list of people who fall in that category and who did you interview?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that, and on it, I'm not gonna lie, like when I would give presentations, that was the biggest question I asked was like, how did you maintain anonymity? And I would say, we did it the way that we maintain anonymity in any other research project. But if you went back and looked at the numbers, in reality, if you were, you could figure out who said what. Like you could 100%. And that's the problem, is that the numbers were so low that people were afraid to even participate. And I do not blame them because of the fact that the numbers were so low. And I could say, okay, who were the number of Hispanic women that were doing engineering at this university at this time? Because the numbers were so low, if 5 people out of however many, like, you could figure it out. And so the anonymity piece, I think, was the absolute hardest because we wanted to do the research, but we wanted to make sure that people were safe. And safety for me is number one. So I think that was the hardest thing.
So did you wind up having to kind of disaggregate by those intersectional groups?
So I'm not gonna lie, it depended on the project.
Oh, yeah, I mean the safety, right? Like
100%.
For safety reasons, was it necessary to disaggregate in some of these projects?
Yeah, it depended on the project. It depended on how many people were participating, a variety of different variables.
That's such a crazy, painful thing because it's like self-replicating the problem. Like I can't help women in tech because I can't get enough information from the women in tech. Have you read Invisible Women?
I have.
Yes.
Yes.
This was like the one DEI book in my MBA, but that's a story for it.
I did read. Yep, I did read Invisible Women. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just so horrified at the lack of women's participation in research or not counting the women separately from the men in the research. So that seems like again, thank you, like doing the research in general. I appreciate that research is good and done. A thing that occurs to me, and this is from my perspective, from my lived experience as a woman in tech, and also things I've gotten wrong. Let's put it that way. Did you find that bringing people together ever had deleterious effects? Like, oh, well, that happens to me too. That's not really a thing. Was there ever a feeling, a moment when it was like, oh, well, I don't think that's because you're a woman. I think that's just because they're like that.
Good question. Yes. And I had to my wheels were turning with your question because I think part of the issue was that when we were doing research with women in engineering, and I think it really did, again, like I mentioned, it depended on what discipline of engineering you were in.
Yeah.
Because I do distinctly remember hosting a GLA or focus group with women in engineering. And there was a woman that said, men tell me that I got this co-op or this position, this internship because I'm a woman. Okay, we heard that. But there were women who, because they were in, let's say, biomedical engineering, where it was pretty close to 50-50, where they would say, well, I never heard that. Why do you think that's true? Because between the disciplines, there was such a difference. But in general, I would find that within those group of us, women were really supportive of each other, and they would it's one of those instances where it's like, believe women. Yes. Like, believe them when they say what they say. Believe women. believe Black women, believe when they say what they say. And surprisingly, even for specific, because there was a lot of mostly white women in those conversations, and even specifically with white women who may have been in an engineering discipline that was 50-50 men and women are close, I would honestly still find that they were like, tell me more about that. I didn't know that was happening. Tell me more. And there was that strong belief in, we are going to believe you. That I don't know if it surprised me, but I don't know if it 100% surprised, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that.
That's fantastic.
Very awesome. A question I had about, we were talking about the safety and the anonymity. One of the other things that feeling not safe can affect things is the self-reporting. People might downplay what they're experiencing if they don't feel safe in what's going on. How did you handle that, or what did you see in that regard with the work?
That's a really great question. So like I mentioned, when we were doing group level assessments, it was like a focus group, but more systemic and more structured. So when we're looking at a traditional focus group, right? What do you see? You see a bunch of people in a room answering questions. There's always the one person, probably me, that's like saying the most because they're the ones that say the most, right? So as specifically, because I am a professor, I am an instructor, I do care a lot about my students' different learning styles. And I think, every student learns differently, which is the same way as I approach research. Everybody responds to prompts differently, and not everybody is comfortable being in a focus group setting. Like if you come out with, we're having a focus group, the people that are comfortable with focus groups are going to say, yes, I'll be part of it. If you're not comfortable with it, you're not going to say, yeah, you're not going to be able to. And there's a lot of things to keep in mind, being particularly maybe being in the global majority, being neurodivergent, having social anxiety. There's so many different things that might prevent you from doing that. And I'm too, like I have anxiety, I'm neurodivergent. And so some of those things that I think can be mitigated by the participatory research that I do is different methods for people to respond. So within group level assessment, there are ways for you to verbally respond in a small group. There are ways for you to verbally respond in a large group. There are ways for you to respond on paper. There are on paper individually with other people, anonymously respond on Post-it. So there's a lot. And again, this is like getting into the details of group level assessment, which I don't want to inundate everybody with. But in general, the way that
Brett loves, if you could tell Brett.
Yeah, please just keep going.
Okay. Well, so basically, in general, the way that group level assessment works is there's multiple different ways throughout the process that you can respond. So you can respond anonymously on paper. You can respond in a reflective way on paper that nobody sees. You can respond in a group. And so there's so many different ways that you can respond that it's not perfect because everybody responds in different ways and is able to reflect in different ways, but it does give multiple options to be able to respond to something as opposed to just, we're going to sit in this focus group and we're going to wait for you to talk out loud in front of this group.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'd be like,
Gotcha.
I'm going to be the person that talks and overshadows everybody, and like someone's got to there's a facilitator, which I've been the facilitator that's like, shh. So the way that I do my research is, again, like I make sure that there's multiple different ways, and I'm aware that there's multiple different ways to be able to respond.
I didn't want to introduce.
Why your timer?
Yes, this is my timer. This is the Carissa Stop timer. Self-imposed.
Fair.
Because of that, right? Like I have the same problem
Yeah.
is that I will take up the energy in a conversation if I'm not being
Yeah. Exactly. So there's ways that we have to say, like, we want to make sure that everybody can respond. And also part of it though, Chris, is like being aware of this is how I respond. And I know I'm aware of myself and I know that I am that, I know that I'm that person. And so being able to just say, how can we make sure that we are including everybody in a way that everyone can respond in a way that is anonymous if they need it to be.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Anything else,
Awesome.
Brett? I was going to shift a little bit if you had any other questions.
Was just going to go with the most surprising. What is the most surprising results? What have you seen that you weren't expecting?
Ooh, okay, that's a really great question. I would say when I was doing research within biomedical informatics, and that was the to talk softly or to not talk at all
Yeah.
paper.
Hmm.
And for those of you who didn't, and I can link it or whatever, but it was a paper it was about women in biomedical informatics in a specific department. And one of the quotes was, do I talk softly? Like, do I not impose in a room? Or do I just not talk at all?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want those repercussions. And I think that the biggest surprise to me was when I was having those conversations with those women was we see, like, obviously we see that it was a men's world. Like, it was 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It was, one of the things that I don't know if it surprised me necessarily, but it surprised me. It also struck me the most, which was, why are we still at the point where it's the guys like, let's all go to lunch and we're just going to ignore the woman? That was something that came up in that paper multiple times. And this was pre-COVID when we were all in the office.
Wow.
Was, let's all go to lunch. And it was like, bro, let's go to lunch. And Chris would be like, mm-mm. Like, there wasn't even an effort. And so many women that I interviewed or that I worked with for that paper mentioned it. Like, they're all going to lunch. And there's 4 of us in the office just like, cool. And but they weren't in the same division. They didn't know each other because of reasons that we talked about before.
Yeah. I want to say we did not plan this in advance, but I have a story.
Tell me.
I didn't know that was going to be your thing.
Do it.
Going to lunch is a huge freaking deal. Huge deal. Software engineering teams, going to lunch, a couple of the teams I've been on, that is the thing. The thing. You go to lunch. And it's not just we go to lunch. When you go to lunch, you build relationships. Somebody has an aha moment about what they're going to do to change the software later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, shit happens at lunch, right?
Shit happens at lunch. Like, you don't realize.
Lunch. And I was on this team. This was a number of years ago, but I've seen this happen repeatedly in other places. But I was on this team where I was the only tester, only QA tester on a web development team. So there's like 20 guys, and I was the only woman, and the only person testing their code. So I had a couple of different like differences, but they would invite male testers from other teams to lunch.
Good.
That would happen. And I down to the point of like, hey, guys, I'm going to be intentional here. I would love to go to lunch. I wasn't quiet about it. I said, hey, I'd love to go. They're like, great, be here at 11. We're out. I'm like, okay, I will, but I've got a meeting that ends right at 11. I'll be there quick as I can after. Just let me know where you're going. I can meet up with other. They're like, no, you be here at 11 or we're going. I'm like, you can't wait for 2 minutes or give me a way. No, we don't do that. But they would do it for almost any other man on that team. It was so, and then when I tell people about this, often they're like, well, it was just lunch. Why are you upset about that? It wasn't a big deal.
Every single day?
They did this every day. I went several times, but it was like, I knew that I was imposing when I went because of the way I had to like insert myself. I had to be like, I wasn't just part of the team. I wasn't one of the guys. I was a different person. And if I wanted to be in that space, I had to like force myself into it and then deal with the awkwardness of being in that space later. That was a huge deal. So thank you. You've just validated.
I didn't realize at the time how big the lunch thing was. God, like huge, because when I was in I was in that when I was in the informatics space, like I was in the education space. So I happened to be in the only like part of the office that had a semi-majority women, like it was women, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it until the other women told me. They were like, yeah, they're all going out to lunch. They're doing board game nights. They're going, I don't know if they did golf. That's like one thing that I think of when I think
They're
like,
going for weekends to mountain bike.
yeah,
to
they're
go
going
mountain
to that.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not involved. I'm not included in that. Everybody else is included. They're like, you can come. The one single woman on the team is totally going to be not cause a problem going for a weekend thing with all the dudes. Yeah, it's just
exactly. It makes it feel uncomfortable for you because you're the one that has to ask.
Yeah.
Like, did they ask you? Did they say, "Oh, we're all going"? No. You have to be like, "Oh, can I?" It makes it weird, and then you feel like you're So it's a whole cultural thing, but like the lunch thing is real, and especially like, and I think now it's a little bit different with a lot of us working remote, but it's a real thing.
Yeah, that's a thing I need to put. We keep coming up with T-shirt slogans. Shit happens at lunch. Invite everyone.
Yes.
Like,
yes, it does 100%. Like it happens at lunch.
yeah.
And you see like the guys huddle at the table, and you're like, I guess I'll take my salad at my desk. Like, yeah.
Gosh,
When I used to think I needed to eat salads for lunch, which is not, no. But
look that.
At the time, I was like, I have to eat a salad and I have to sit on my desk. Exactly. It's like no.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we are getting closer to the end here. I would like to make sure that we mention that we would love to take comments and questions from anyone who's in the audience. I would like to call out Jenna's comment right now. I just read an article about how ostracism by coworkers can be at least as damaging as harassment. This brings up a thing for me, and maybe we can go somewhere with it. If not, we'll just go to if there's more questions. I spent most of my career, probably 20-ish years of it, close to anyway, believing that I was not being discriminated against. Telling myself, this isn't hurting me, this is fine. Oh, I guess if they say that, they really mean it. It's okay. This is not trauma. Like I never registered really in a real way the trauma that was going on. And I love that we talk about these things more openly now. I love that there's support. I love that you have these ideas and these ways to support other women in these spaces. So that you're not being gaslit for 20 years and then gaslighting yourself, right? Like this is anti-gaslighting fuel. Having these spaces, having this research. I made up that term. I kind of like it. It's anti-gaslighting.
Nice.
New t-shirt, anti-gaslight fuel. But this is the thing that I was horrified about myself. Like I could see it. I'd say, oh, you shouldn't be treating these women this way. You shouldn't be treating like da, 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 da. But I'm like, no, whatever. Like it's not. I'm not traumatized by this. I'm just here. It's fine. Wrong.
Yeah.
This was horribly traumatic for years. So
I think it's one of those like lies we tell ourselves in the workplace. Like I feel funny. This has got to be me.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's got to be me. Like you don't look. We convince ourselves that it's us.
Yeah.
And then when we're outside of that toxic workspace, we look back and think, "Holy crap!"
I specifically, Brett, I know you said you didn't want to center around men, but I want to center around neurodivergence for a minute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Something that you've experienced from your perspective in a neurodivergent lens in the workplace or for any lens. Like you have my permission to center whatever experience you want to right now because I want to hear from you.
I am relating to a lot of these things, and the neurodivergence part of it, the lunches, I never went to lunches with anyone because it was awkward and I couldn't handle the noise. I couldn't handle those types of conversations happening all the time. And so I stopped going to the lunches that people would invite. And then within a couple weeks, I stopped getting invited and spent most of my management time without anyone ever inviting me to go to lunch. So I felt a lot of that watching the rest of the management team get together, walk right by my office and heading out to lunch. But for me, I kept telling myself much the same. This is happening because I don't want to be there. It's happening because I shouldn't be involved with this or whatever. And played it off quite a bit. So yeah, that is that aspect, the lunch, the ostracism, definitely something that affects all sorts of people in all of the different diversity groups out there. Whenever you've got the clique group, everyone else is just left out. There was the clique of the people that went to the gym to work out every day at lunch. Those people got promoted very regularly because they also had a bunch of the other management people that went. And so every day during lunch, 20 people would drop everything, head down to the gym and lift weights and talk about, do the lunch type of thing. And if you weren't part of the weightlifting group, and trust me, I am not part of any weightlifting group, you were not considered part of the team, part of the in crowd. And that's where the decisions were made.
All of this ostracism creates a feeling of unsafety or at least just like non-connection, right? Which is not safe. So then you get into a room and somebody says, hey, I want everybody's opinion about this thing. And you're like, do they really want my opinion? I don't think they do. And then you don't talk, right? Like you don't talk at all.
And I think there's definitely a matter of like, we want to hear everyone's opinion. Okay, let's say we're in a situation where we're inclusive enough that let's pretend we're perfectly diverse, whatever that means. We're in a situation, we're in a room where we're perfectly inclusive. Like everyone, we all feel safe talking, right? We all can feel safe talking. But you can feel safe talking, but are your opinions being taken seriously because of who you are? And that's the other part of it. Like I can be like, oh, I feel safe. I feel safe sharing this with y'all. Yeah. But is everyone else taking my opinions? And there's so many layers to it. And yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's like the whole lunch thing too, which might sound bad, but like, do I want to go to lunch with you? Absolutely not. No, I don't want to go to lunch with you. Do I need to be do I want to be invited to be part of these conversations? Like I feel like I need to for my job. There's a difference. Like this is my time. Do I want to hang out with you? Like, do I want to hang out with you too? Yes, but I'm talking about do I want to hang out with people in general? No. Do I want to hang out with like random people that are ostracizing me? No. Do I feel like I need to? Yes. And that's the difference, I think.
I honestly believe a lot of my career progression was halted in a lot of ways because I didn't go to these non-work activities, because they went and did their stuff and they got to know each other and they created those connections, and then the jobs would come up and I'm pretty sure I was doing good, but not considered because not part of that particular.
Yeah, I'm losing the word. We went to a lunch last week. Got invited to a lunch. Yay. There were 3 women. Maybe 4 women in like a group of like 60 men in this information management lunch. But it was from Dr. Timothy Clark, his the psychological safety. I'm forgetting the name of the book. I wish I had it in front of me. Anyway, he wrote a brilliant article about it for Harvard. But he talks about the levels of inclusion. You just that first level of we feel safe to talk with each other. That is the first stage. To get up to that, where you can participate, where your opinion matters, where and then where you're a decision maker, like those are all different levels of inclusion that you, and that first level, that's just like you're a human. It's not based on anything else. You show up, we include you, period. And then the rest of them, there was, I wish I had it in front of me, leaderfactor.com, Dr. Timothy Clark, amazing stuff. That when you talk about the layers, like that's one of the things that he studied, is that like there's these very distinct echelons of what inclusion means, and getting your team to that top layer is hard. And we don't even get there. We don't even get to the first layer with most DEI efforts.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Did we have any questions?
Have not seen any more show up. I wanted to share one of my favorite recent acronyms that I've learned recently, as we were talking about sharing your opinion doesn't necessarily mean it matters. And that's the HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion, and how that's the only thing that matters in a lot of groups is listening to the HIPPO. And that makes it, when that happens, everyone gives their opinions, gives their impressions, thoughts, and ideas. And the highest paid person says, I think we should do this. And everyone goes, oh, that's what we're doing. All right.
Yeah.
And then they don't shift it,
Does not
right?
build
It
that
doesn't
safety.
build the safety going forward. You can do that one time and maybe get some like authentic or innovative ideas. And then after that, it's understood that you don't, that invitation didn't mean that you actually had any sort of say. So.
And I think that that's big, like for me, like in the change management space, a lot of what I look, when I look at in the change management space, we see places saying, we're told that people want our input on change, but then in reality, like they do these surveys, they do focus groups, but really it's the people that are in charge. I don't know if I can say the HIPPO because I'm in Cincinnati, and Fiona is a very big, like Fiona, and I think it's like Fitz, or I don't know. We've got some important HIPPOs here at the Cincinnati.
Okay.
Legit HIP, like actual.
We'll find a better acronym for you.
But no, I get it. It's like the leadership, but that's the information, that's the feedback that we get is like, we can tell us what you think all you want, but leadership is the one making the decision. So there's this habit of saying, we're going to put out a survey or a focus group and see what everybody else thinks, but then we're still going to do whatever we wanted to do. And they think we're dumb, like they think we're stupid, like that. We see that, we know that, like you're asking us for our opinion, but then you're doing the opposite. Like we know what's happening. We know that you're just doing whatever you wanted in the first place. And so I think that's the aspect of, if you're doing something truly participatory,
yep,
it's really just, it's simple. It's a matter of taking everyone in the company or everyone in the institution or whatever's opinions into perspective and actually caring about them, which a lot of times it's just checking a box saying we asked them, but we're still doing what we wanted in the first place, which is not inclusive. It's not equitable. It's awful. It's awful.
And I would suggest the one way I've seen this done better, or done, if everybody's opinions come in and they don't match what the company actually needs, you be transparent. You say,
yes,
we loved your ideas.
Totally.
XYZ is why we can't implement these now. How do we get there? We're sorry that we can't do it, or however you want to phrase it. You don't even have to say sorry, right? Like that's maybe not even a sorry thing, but like transparency about why the decision was made, so that people don't just default to thinking you ignored me.
Like tell us why, at least. Yeah, totally agree.
That's kind of it's not really, but when you think about the privilege, right? Privilege is the things you don't have to worry about. It's right. If you're a leader in that space, you have a privilege of knowing all of the things. So you don't have to worry about that. You're not realizing that these other people have a worry that you do not have. And helping to include them means to break down your own privilege and recognize other people that do not have that. So, yeah, that's my favorite definition of privilege. It's worked best for me. It's like the things I don't worry about are the places of privilege.
Yeah.
So. For sure. Okay. Well, I do want to start wrapping up a little bit. What last thoughts and questions do we have?
I had one and it disappeared. So
we're gonna blame her for that. I'm gonna put a small plug for at Inclusive Agile. We're a very small team. We've just started this year. As I said in the beginning, we're trying to learn in this space. We're trying to partner with people that are awesome. We have these calls. We have these events because we want to elevate the voices of people who are doing things in this space or adjacent to this space that add things that we don't have. So Sheva's research has been huge. I've learned a lot. I hope that people out in that are watching have learned a lot, because every time you learn a little bit more about inclusion, about empathy, about privilege, you're a little bit better able to engage with the next conversation that you have to have. So I'm very grateful that Sheva's been able to come on twice with us. I'm hoping we can find more ways to partner together because I think
it's been so much fun. I love partnering with you guys. It's been so much fun.
I super love it. And then again, we're a very small team. We're 7 people. We're all in Utah. For now.
For now.
So we lack some of the diversity that we'd like. And in the future, I mean, we're hiring consultants, we're hiring coaches for ourselves, coaches to subcontract when we go out places. We'd like people with the lived experience that we don't have, or with the training, the knowledge, the research that we don't have to become part of our team. So if you're interested, all white men need not apply. Yay!
Yay!
I was paying attention, I promise.
I had to throw one in. Regardless if you think that regardless of who you are, if you're interested in helping us with the work of inclusion, especially if you know something about Agile or the DEI space, reach out. We'd love to spend time talking to you. If you have a problem, we'll solve it.
Oh
God, I'm
glad
so
I wasn't the
embarrassed
only
right now
one that
for
got
you.
there.
I'm gonna leave. Nope.
I tried to stop my brain from letting that come out my mouth.
I feel like that's something that's 100% something that would have come out of my. I get it.
Seriously though, we do one-on-one coaching. We love to talk to people in this space. We're willing to work with whoever needs it. Got a yikes in the chat from Darren.
Yeah.
Woo, literal yikes in the chat. Okay, we're gonna close this down on that.
That's it. We're done.
Thank you again, Sheva.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. It's always fun chatting with y'all.
Awesome. So Brandy's going to show at the very end here. Please stick around. We've got some links for Sheva's work.
There we are.
Thank you again. We'll see you guys soon.